the professor of global oncology at the at a university in Canada. And I think I'm not detailing many of his achievements and awards because I have already communicated through the email. And because there are so many things to his credit, and I'm humbled to see the Pallium India here in Trivandrum, and I thank Pallium India for hosting me here, and I'm enthralled by the experience, the work that they are doing in the community, meeting with the downtrodden, the most downtrodden in the society. And also what I have seen is a kind of work which is not very common, because we don't see the healthcare professionals out in close association with the local community, because they seem to be always enclosed in a very space and comfortable space, which Dr. Rajagopal in his whole career has been challenging and has challenged and shown the way for all the upcoming medical systems and medical professionals, also for the community and also the policy maker. I think I have been discussing this in the class regarding his contribution in amending the Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Act to make it more people friendly and to increase or to allow access of morphine to pain care in Kerala. And he's also the author of the book Walk with the Wary, Life-Changing Lessons in Healthcare. And there is a new book which has also been published in Malayalam, which is called, I think you can see, Sneham Sandhana, which was released very few days, I think 3 days ago in Trivandrum. And I think and this book is being procured by our IIT Palakkad library. It will be in the library within, I think, 1 or 2 months maximum. With this, I again welcome you warmly to IIT Palakkad and again over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Sudarshan. Thank you for your very kind words, and hello, everybody. Before I start, I must say how humbled I am to see this group having everything, all the transactions interpreted by Sarah and Prachi. The compassion that you demonstrate with that arrangement, well, I go to you. So, Dr. Sudarshan mentioned about palliative care. I hope I am audible.
Are we audible, Anurant?
Yes, sir, we are audible.
Let me start by telling you a story. 7 years back, a 12-year-old boy approached us, asking for care for his mother. She was a juvenile diabetic. Diabetes detected at the age of 4, and now she was 32 and a mother of a 12-year-old boy. As the diabetes became worse, her husband deserted her and the child. And as a single parent, she had no way to just exist, continue to exist. The situation was so bad that on one Sunday, the boy said, "Mom, I can't bear this anymore. Let us kill ourselves." The mom said, "Just somehow hang in there, son. Tomorrow, mom will find a way." They spent the Sunday in hunger. And on Monday morning, somehow she made it her way to the community health center. This is within Trivandrum city. Fortunately, there was a kind doctor who admitted her. And the boy was approaching us for help 3 months later. In the meantime, her diabetes was not controlled. Her whole left lower limb was encased in a dirty dressing, always oozing pus. She had been advised above knee amputation. It was not done only because she did not have a bystander, so no hospital would proceed. 12-year-old boy was not eligible. Well, we transferred her to our palliative care center. Uh, we ourselves found it hard to control her diabetes, and we sought the help of a diabetologist, very kindly, who waived his fees. We only had to pay for the transport and other hospital expenses. They continue to treat her. I'm glad to say that she continues to have her lower limb now. She did not need an amputation. Now, she had been blind for 4 years because of the complication of the diabetes on that. Let me show you. Our social worker went to her home where she was supposed to have been living. Share the screen. Sorry? Share the screen. I'm just sharing only them. This chicken coop was where the woman and son were living. Dirt floor. This was in Porambok, government's land. There was a construction going on next door. They were threatening to throw her out any moment. She did not have a ration card. It had been taken away by some member of the family because she was blind. No other card. She did not exist. The son did not exist. If you think this is a rare story, well, maybe it is with the combination of all the problems. But please be aware that there are 1.7 lakhs of elders living alone in Kerala, single member households without even a home nurse. Those who live with a home nurse do not get into this statistic. The kind of lives they live with when they have a disease, the kind of deaths they die is something that you wouldn't know. I myself did not know. Though I belong to a village in Kerala, essentially, I did not know what happens to people when they become ill. I'll tell you later what happened, the subsequent story of the mother and the child. They were, I strongly believe, victims of our society's violence. They were not hungry because our place, our state or our country does not have enough food. The amount being wasted by a neighbor possibly was enough to feed them. And it's violence because the system that you and I are part of prevent that food reaching them, prevent that treatment reaching them. Treatment is supposed to be free in government hospitals. They have all the medicines nowadays, but it did not reach them, and that's the violence. This man with advanced lung cancer, which had spread to his bones, was in this position for most of 3 weeks. He could not tolerate any other position. The family said after hours in this position, he would lie down on his side, have a nap for a few minutes, then he's back again in this position. He had changed from a loving grandfather to a person with no mind space for anything other than his pain. Less than 10 rupees of medicine. Less than 1 hour later, he sat up and enjoyed his first cup of tea in 3 weeks. And if you think he was happy and thanking us, you are mistaken. He was very angry. He said, if this was possible, why was this denied to me for 3 months now, out of 3 weeks in this position. That's a question to all of us. We live in a democratic country. We, you and I, are responsible for this violence. It's not only cancer. The young woman had diabetes, mind you. The families, that family and this family, are in serious health-related suffering. 51 million people in the low and middle income world, out of whom 7 to 10 million are in India, are in unrelieved serious health-related suffering. Less than 4% of them has access even to basic pain relief. According to the United Nations Special Rapporteur for Torture, the de facto denial of access to pain relief, if it causes severe pain and suffering, constitutes inhuman or degrading treatment or punishment. Inhuman or degrading treatment or punishment. Now we have a respectable term to describe what we are doing to them. But all these, if I say, are errors of omission, what we are not doing. Look at this. In India, paper published in British Medical Journal 2018, 3 Indian authors, 55 million Indians are destroyed by catastrophic health expenditure every year. That's more than 4% of the population. What is health? Officially, it is defined as physical, social, and mental well-being. Let me repeat. Physical, social, and mental well-being. What are we doing to the health of these people? Isn't healthcare destroying health for that 4% of the population in 1 year? And if that is not enough, let me tell you about another error of commission. I don't know how many of you have had the experience. If a loved one in your own family, a grandparent, an uncle, an aunt, or even a parent, going through a serious illness and dying in an intensive care unit, if there are some of you who have gone through it, my apologies to you. I am going to give you a stab of pain as I talk about this. Dr. Sankhamitra, a British oncologist of Bengali origin who does charity work in the northeast of India, says, in India, the poor die in misery of neglect, the middle class die in misery of ignorance, and the rich die in misery on ventilators. No one gets a pain-free and dignified death. Dr. Sudarshan, you were earlier talking about the marginalized. Yes, that woman and child were marginalized. That man was marginalized. But the rich man in the intensive care unit, I would say, is even more marginalized. He is suffering for the crime of having money. He cannot die a humane death. When my time comes, I hope I'll have my family around us. I hope my colleagues, Dr. Sunil and team, will relieve my pain and physical suffering. I hope I'll have my family around me, at least 1 or 2 of them, hopefully. I hope I'll be able to say a final farewell to my wife. And maybe if I'm scared, I would want to hold my son's hand for a minute. And I would like to go receiving a kiss on my cheek from my grandchild. All these will be systematically stolen from me by the inappropriate end of lifestyle. The error of omission was in denying pain relief and other treatment of other physical suffering, mental and social suffering. The errors of commission are the catastrophic health expenditure, and the infliction of intensive suffering. Let me talk about palliative care. Many of you would have heard of the term. Many people may have some mistaken ideas about it. To us, palliative care is relief from serious health-related suffering and improvement of quality of life. I repeat, relief from serious health-related suffering and improvement of quality of life. Quality of life matters, not only the quantity. That young woman, deserted by loved ones, living alone because she has a cancer which causes stench, cancer of the uterus, is not only suffering from the cancer, her suffering is in all these domains. The pain, the bad odor, but also the emotional issue. What a hated life this is. What a cursed life this is. The social suffering, abandonment by the family, it happens a lot in India. When a woman has a serious illness, the husband deserts her. And the spiritual suffering. God, why did you do this to me? What's the point of my being alive? I wish I were dead. And each of these elements of suffering worsens the other. You can see the circles are all intertwined, each encroaching onto the other. I repeat, palliative care is relief from serious health-related suffering and improvement of quality of life. And please remember, this is not necessarily about somebody else. All this happens in every life. It happens to your loved ones' lives. And so you must remember, we are not only talking of cancer. Many people think that palliative care is only about cancer. It's not only for end of life care. So long as there is suffering, palliative care is applicable. And therefore, it will often have to go hand in hand with disease-specific treatment. Dr. Sudarshan this morning met this young woman, Mashla Rani. She, at the age of 28, fell from a train, injured her neck, and became paralyzed below the neck. She has minimal movement of the hands, with which she types with her knuckles. She cannot use her fingers. But she is one of the trustees of Palliative India, living a full life. And she says, I am not a disabled person because of the paralysis. I am disabled only if a sidewalk, a building, or a restaurant is not accessible to my wheelchair. I am disabled only when I am not allowed into the world around me. She is also a recipient of palliative care and a provider of palliative care. Her physical disability remains. Her physical suffering is treated.
Please mute your mic. Somebody. Someone has switched on the mic. Can you please mute your mic? Anuranj, you can mute someone who is whose mic is on.
Thank you. So, palliative care, as I said, is also for the people who need it for quality of life through the lifetime, not only for end of life, not only for cancer. In 2014, the World Health Assembly, that is the decision-making body of the World Health Organization, advised all member countries to integrate palliative care into healthcare at all levels, primary, secondary, and tertiary, across the continuum of care, from the onset till cure or death of the person. 2014, yet I say now, only less than 4% of the population has access to palliative care. Something wrong there? Who is responsible? What's the problem? Is it that the palliative care is not expensive? I told you, the only 10 rupees worth of medicine made the man sit up. There is no glamour in it. Is that the problem? Aren't you and I responsible? If we are responsible members of the society and voters in this country, nationally the stage is set. As far as the government is concerned, there is a national program in palliative care. The law governing opioids was amended in 2014. We had to work hard at it for 19 years to make it happen. But it is legally, the problems are solved. Government of India has a national health policy framed in 2017. And very recently, 2019 and 21, the MBBS postgraduate medical courses and degree nursing course all include palliative care. But in our country, the implementation gap can be huge, which is what we need to facilitate filling of. Because a system that compels people to suffer in agony within a chicken coop is not permissible in a cultured society. The woman and the boy now have a home to live in. She can walk, at least with support. She now uses crutches. The ulcer is not healed completely. The boy is 19 now, studying in an ITA, Industrial Training Institute. Hopefully, in 2 years, he'll be able to earn for the family. Her diabetes will overcome her. But isn't that important for that mother to have been alive during the critical time of the boy's life? And so long as she enjoys life, even with all the difficulties, is it not important for her to survive? So what we did as professionals was very little. We were just facilitators. Okay, the specialist doctors had a lot of role to play, but that was only in the physical domain. She now, for the last 7 years, has had a modest rented home to live in, not in that chicken coop anymore. There is an angel in Trivandrum, a lawyer. Her name is Sandhya, an activist. She went after it and found out who had stolen the ration card. She did not go to court. She did not go to police station. Just by telling them that what she can do, she got it back. Now the woman and the boy have identities. When they need treatment, that's taken care of. I told you, the woman had been blind for 4 years. A paid caregiver for 1 week after her diabetes was controlled. The Government Institute of Ophthalmology in Trivandrum did the surgery. After 4 years, she saw her son again. We talk about miracles. The blind, the relieved of the blindness, the disabled, the paralyzed walking again. There are miracles in the holy books. These are miracles that ordinary people around us do. The common man or and woman in the street, they make these things happen. My point that I am coming to is this. Palliative care specialists like us are necessary. You see the triangle on the top. But more will be achieved when the whole healthcare system adopts a palliative approach along with treatment of the disease. That is what is likely to happen with the education, change in medical education that's already started. But the foundation is you and me as ordinary human beings. Community engagement is the answer. Oh, this is not a new invention. It's not as if we are protagonists of the whole new movement, by no means. This is what was advised by the so-called Astana Declaration of 2018, a global declaration. It asked all member countries to have the health systems work in partnership with the community. This is not going to happen spontaneously because there is a power imbalance. With our medical education and strength of the hospitals, and because the person with the disease is weak, weakened by the disease, we now have an upper hand. But this partnership is essential. This is our home visit team in action. We, in Trivandrum, it happens all over the state, we have 7 teams going out on home visits. This man wouldn't have been able to sit up. He would have never received any health care if, and this doctor and this nurse would not have been able to reach them if this volunteer had not facilitated that. Volunteer from the community. How do they evolve? Well, when our home visits teams go to the villages, rural areas particularly, interested people come in, watching what's happening. Our team would talk to them. And sometimes the interested people, a group evolves. We give them training in palliative care. They are enrolled into it. And this happens in more than 450 places in Kerala alone, where local organizations are formed. More than 200 of them are registered charitable institutions. There's a man with cancer living there here. During the monsoons, within his house, he had to sit up holding an umbrella because the roof could not be repaired. There was no money. And what would the big medical institutes do? How would they solve the problem? 3 volunteers solved the problem. For that monsoon season, they pulled that tarpaulin over the house and the man could lie down again. All my medicines would have been part of the problem if the man was not able to lie down. The community can work miracles. Our organization is a registered charitable organization called Palliative India. What we do, is what we say, DEF, demonstrates, educates, facilitates. Demonstrates palliative care delivery, educates professionals and the public about palliative care, which is what I believe we are doing together now, and facilitates development of palliative care services. If any of you get together with a few people and think you would like to do something, we will work with you. Our team will work with you. Dr. Sudarshan will be the liaison person, I am sure, happily. Through our demonstration and education and facilitation, so far we believe we have reached more than 1 lakh of people in India, not only in Trivandrum, through our link center. But we are talking about 7 to 10 million people needing to be reached, which I hope we will be able to do together with you. And when some people come forward, hey, can we do something? We'll tell them, yes, let us join you. We'll sensitize the community around you. And when volunteers come forward to get trained, we will train them. It can be retired people giving the whole week. It can be a techie giving us every Saturday. We will train professionals to work with you, and we'll help the local organization to start palliative care services. So, friends, thank you for listening to me patiently. I'll stop there because I still notice that we have at least another 23 minutes, which we will, I hope. I'm sure there must be many questions, and I will be glad to answer them to the best of my ability.
Thank you very much, Professor Dr. Rajagopal, for your time. So the floor is open for questions. So if anybody wants to ask questions, you can ask, or you can put it in the chat box too. So is there any question, anything that you want to ask regarding palliative care?
Dr. Sudarshan, I do have a question to Dr.
Please.
Rajagopal.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, so could you please elaborate the role of grief management in palliative care? Like, is it part of palliative care, or is it inclusive, or it's separate?
Could you please introduce yourself briefly?
Okay, I'm Tessie from IIT Palakkad. I work as a counselor over here.
See, I'm sorry, I did not quite understand the question. Can you repeat that?
The question was, sir, is grief management included in palliative care, or it's dependent on the case? Like, is it inclusive? Is it part of palliative care, grief management, when it comes to cases?
Absolutely, absolutely. Tessie, thank you for asking the question. Earlier I said the suffering is the physical, social, emotional, and spiritual domains. And grief, including the anticipatory grief. Okay, what's going to happen to me? How will my family live? Oh, I wish I was ready for that. I have one of my colleagues giving a TEDx talk in Bengaluru, and she was describing how she saw a fisherman in agonizing pain during a home visit and regurgitating his own waste. And when asked, what is it that bothers you most? The man was silent for a while. You see, grief management also includes being able to be still and quiet, more of ears than tongue. After some minutes, the man said, all I wanted was my children not to be fishermen. Now they are going to be just that. This was his anticipatory grief. palliative care included not only the medicines for the man, but a document the next day showing your children's education will be taken care of. But it's also palliative care. One thing I forgot, palliative care is not only for the person with the illness, it's also for the family. So we have a bereavement program. Every family on home visits after the death of the patient gets at least one home visit, a bereavement visit. Sometimes we find pathological grief. That's grief which has turned into a mental illness that needs to be treated. They need to support, many of them need support to get back to normal life. We also educate more than 300 children from families such as that. So, long answer to a short question, Tassie. Short answer is yes. Indeed, inevitably essential part of palliative care, grief management.
Thank you very much for that question. Any other questions? You may put
Hi,
it in
sir.
the... Yeah, you can introduce and ask.
Hi, sir. My name is Anuranj. Could you please share some examples of successful collaboration between academic institutions and palliative care providers in the community setting so that UB institutions like us can replicate?
Academic institutions. I think wherever you are speaking from, there is more than one device connected. So that's possibly causing the echo. In one room, sorry, what I heard possibly was linked with academic institutions. Is that what you said? Certainly, yes.
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 Yeah.
Not necessarily with academic medical institutions.
No, academic institutions.
Academic institutions and palliative care institutions.
Let me try to answer and see if that's the answer to your question. Certainly, with the medical academic institutions, we have a memorandum of understanding with Tamil Nadu MGR Medical University and with Kerala University Health Sciences. We do not have such an MOU with any other academic institutions, but we have an MOU and we work together with the National Service Scheme of Kerala University so that students come and work with us. I mean, there have been people, students actually helping people by accompanying them to the hospital for a consultation. The students go out and clean the surroundings of the people's homes. So these are some of them, but not enough. Your question points to the fact that what we have done is precious little. We certainly need better collaboration with institutions like yours. How about making it the first one, formal one?
Thank you for that question. So there is a question in the chat box. I was wondering if palliative care is asked by Prasadida and Ravindran. Care also caters to the immediate family members in helping them understand how well to take care of their loved one, the patient, or both emotionally and physically.
Absolutely, Prasadida. That is such an important part of care, empowerment of the family, helping them to cope, not forgetting the young children. Sometimes children are thrust into the role of caregivers and they need a lot of support. Adolescents who already are struggling with adolescence also have this to struggle with. They all need a lot of support. And any loving family will need help. And when help is not forthcoming, sometimes horrible things happen. We had over the many years the experience of two wives of men living with paraplegia killing themselves. One of them had a small child, and everybody was cursing her. How could she do it? They do not understand what the woman would have gone through. I mean, if you get into a depressive illness, you don't have control over your own life. They are in a deep abyss. So, yes, are we doing enough? No. But certainly, when we register a patient with us, in our registration process, one column is for the immediate family. What illnesses do they live with? What other problems? And care of the family is an important part of what we do. And especially for these people who are with us for a long term, like people with paralysis. The family needs a lot of empowerment. How to take care of the person, how to take care of themselves. Because very often when one person gets ill, the wife, typically, woman is the caregiver, stops looking after themselves. They don't have the luxury of having some time to themselves, and their health matters. So these are some things that we try to do. And with your help, we would be able to do so much more.
Thank
So
you.
that's it. Both these questions were very perceptive, and wherever I had failed to mention important points, they have filled in. Thank you very much.
Thanks. And is there any other questions that you can ask directly? There are no questions in the chat box, so you feel free to ask.
If not, can I ask them a question?
Sure.
There are, I see, how many? 20 people in the as participants. At least two of you would have had the experience of a loved one going through a prolonged illness, suffering, maybe living in suffering or having died in suffering. That person may not be comfortable talking about it, but sometimes it is quite cathartic to talk about it. If anybody would like to share an experience, I think, Dr. Sudarshan, with your permission, we have some time.
Sure. So that's the next. So do you want to say
So I think people will need a minute to organize their thoughts if anybody has anything to say. Well, even if somebody has an experience, it is not easy to come out with something in a public forum. It will be emotionally so challenging. So there is a question in the chat box.
I think we were discussing about this, I think, a lot. Relevance of, I think this, he's a professor in the Government Engineering College, Palakkad. He's the coordinator of the Unat Bharat Abhiyan at Government Engineering College, Palakkad, which comes under
Yes.
the-
Yes, yes.
So, Dr. Sudarshan, we had earlier today had discussed this between us, particularly with Ms. Ashla Rani, whose picture I showed you, the young woman living with quadriplegia, paralysis below the neck. And we were talking about this. So perhaps you should be the one answering the question.
Yeah, I will try my level. So yeah, so we were discussing about the yes, the dire need, I would say, of technological innovations in disability assistive technologies, which I was talking to a physiotherapist, and I myself have been to the some of the patients, and it's immense, but this is not tapped actually. So it's not, I think, as particularly mentioned. For example, palliative care is also, I feel it's not that glamorous a profession to go to the community to meet people, etc., etc. So we have been to the space and everything, but we see even difficulty with, I have seen a patient just now who is on wheelchair, and this wheelchair is not at all, suitable for that particular patient because the person is suffering from paraplegia and he is not able to, get into a bike which is customized for that. But it was donated by somebody, but because of this non-alignment, the person is not able to, get into the bike. It's not usable. And the other thing is, I also heard a story of an 18-year-old boy who suffered from quadriplegia. He was swimming and had a head injury. So the person is bedridden for the past 5 years, and the mother is the only caregiver at home. And it's very difficult for her in 5 years to actually shift the person, her son, to any other. So she waits and waits, for somebody to assist her. So there are hoist technologies in foreign countries where the person can be, hoisted, on a on a platform, and it is, very costly to be implemented in low middle income countries like India, and we don't have technologies which are making or innovations which can create such low cost, no cost, or culturally appropriate technological platforms. So there is a very lack of, as far as we have discussed, the engineering and technology, professionals are not creating these technologies by taking the voices of the users into account. There's a dire gap between the community and the technology professionals. It is very top-down approach, and definitely if technologists can come down to the level of the at the community level and see through the sufferings and can innovate technologies which will be a huge impact on people who are suffering. They may be, for the mother, shifting the technology which would be helpful to shift her son, because she is also now facing a lot of pain because she has been constantly doing it, and she has to wait for one or the other person in the neighborhood or from the palliative care to go and shift her son, and the son also suffered for 5 years being bedridden, bedbound. So what can be done? So there are many other possibilities which we were actually discussing, and I think I will be very interested to discuss, and Professor Rajagopal and the team will be very much interested to actually take, to have more conversations. If you want to ask anything specifically to Professor Rajagopal, you are welcome to. Please.
It's a question of Professor Dr. Satya.
Okay. So,
And Dr. Satya, you have asked several questions. On what basis do we choose patients for palliative care? Is it based on the intensity of diseases? It is based on the intensity of the suffering. We don't choose patients. Patients and families choose us. They come to us with suffering, and we listen to them. If somebody, people with negligible suffering do not really come to us. It's either people referring themselves or doctors referring people with advanced illnesses. So the suffering is what matters, and that is not necessarily physical. It can be emotional suffering, but related to a health issue. So health, illness-related suffering. Socioeconomic scale does not play a role. Socioeconomic scale will play a role in the nature of the services that we give. Understandably, the educational support for children of those families will be for people with living with poverty. The help with the housing, etc., goes to people like Jaya and Son that I talked about. For the affluent people, the suffering will be entirely of a different scale. Like they have no one to take care of them. The children are abroad. A home nurse is the one taking care, and The home nurse goes home for a holiday and there is nobody there for a whole day. So these are really major problems which we professionals have not been able to tackle. We are able to tackle them because there are volunteers from the community working with us. Dr. Satya also asked, what age group of the people are high in palliative care? Dr. Satya, roughly 2/3 of all our patients are the elderly. In India, unlike in other countries, we are considered elderly officially above the age of 60. So 2/3 of our patients approximately are the elderly, understandable. As people live longer, the diseases related to old age become more. The other 1/3 are from all age groups, including infants and children. We have a separate team looking after palliative care for children. The majority, most of the children with cancer go to the cancer center. We have only a small number of people, children coming to us with cancer. But it's all either neurological problems or musculoskeletal problems, bone and joint diseases. So there also the care is offered to the child, but also to the family, because mostly it will be a mother or another woman in the house who will be caring for the child. And unfortunately, in our place, we find that up to 20% of the fathers desert the family when there is a serious suffering like that. Dr. Satya, have I answered your question, or is there a follow-up question that you want to ask? Thank you.
So if there are any other questions, you can ask directly or you can put it in the chat box. I think there is no question at the moment. So I just wanted to ask you because I think you constantly challenge the whole imagination of a doctor. I know that you are a very accomplished doctor having an MBBS from a government medical college in Trivandrum, one of the foremost medical colleges in the state, and you did an MD in anesthesiology at All India Institute of Medical Sciences, Delhi, and you had a very accomplished career as a physician, the head of the Department of Anesthesiology. You started palliative care. You have written a lot on this. So many accomplishments, even a Padma Shri, internationally renowned doctor. But your approach is so simple, and you constantly challenge this imagination of the doctor being a person who is, in a Robinson Crusoe island, who is not at all connected with us. That is what we imagine of a doctor. So how did you become like that, and how can you how do you express how your approach to, even I see you speak very simply to even the attendance here. So even we see it in any of the even education institutions, this hierarchy and the kind of. So I just want to know how did you become like this, and what is the secret behind your personality, the making of you as Dr. Raj?
That's a bit embarrassing, but I recognize that I am not only a healthcare professional, I am also a human being. As a human being, I have my duty and responsibility to my fellow human beings. And when I started being a human being, see, all these things that I do are fairly simple. It's not like very complicated robotic surgery or work on the hardware. Very commonplace things. But when I started doing it, a lot of people joined, professionals, but also ordinary people. So I believe my colleagues and I in palliative care what we do is to give permission to people to be compassionate. Everybody has a bit of compassion in you. But how many of you have bought a meal for someone who is starving? You see them everywhere, very obviously, because it is not the done thing. You are walking in a group, you do something, and then, oh, who are you, Father Damien or Mother Teresa? That kind of question comes. It's not the done thing. What we did for all those school and college students is just giving them permission to be compassionate, allow the compassion in them to come out. So, Dr. Sudarshan, it's not as if I'm doing a great favor to anyone. These are things that enrich my life. The pleasure that I get out of somebody who is holding my hand and blessing me is precious. We had one man who came cursing God and begging to be killed. What God? There's no God. No God would do this to me. None of us preached to him. Nobody said that, no, you shouldn't talk like that. God is a... We wouldn't. We would learn to shut up. The same man, 2 days back, 2 days later, held our nurse's hand and said, Mole, daughter, I thought there was no God, but there is a God. And that God sent you to me as his angel. And the way life gets enriched for my colleagues and I is that kind of blessing and interaction and the meaning of life that we get out of it. So it's not as if it's a great sacrifice or anything. There is that selfish element. I am doing something that gives me satisfaction.
A lot of learnings for me actually. Many I have seen that in most. I've also trained as a clinical psychologist in a government of India institution. I see that many a time what you are speaking of compassion is very much lacking in health professionals because it's become so mechanical and technological that we become kind of a vending machine kind of an instrument which measures blood pressure or whatever. So this feeling that you are talking about, everything goes sideline. So how do you really, how do you inculcate or how do you imagine healthcare to be, or what is your thought of, because being in policy making and having experience working with governments, policy making bodies, and experience as a doctor in seeing sufferings, being like on the ground, meeting people in various backgrounds in rural areas, urban areas, across socio-demographics.
Dr. Sudarshan, I was a vending machine myself. I learned as a medical student to build a wall around me. So much suffering all around. And without anybody telling me in so many words, I learned to make that wall thicker and thicker, escape from that suffering. So how? Look only at the disease. Don't look at the person. It was only when, I'm not very proud to admit it, it was only by the age of around 40 that I got the courage to look at suffering in the face and do something about it. So, this is not unusual. What those young people in National Service Scheme in the colleges here, what they get is an opportunity to see another way of doing it. Otherwise, everybody is running away. Medical students are running away from suffering. Doctors are running away from suffering. There's a surgeon who is doing palliative care in a neighboring town. And he's in his late 30s, I guess. He looks very young. But he was telling me that if there was somebody with burns having a dressing change and screaming, he would just vanish from the scene, leave it to others. He couldn't take it. Today, he is able to face it. So, so listen, I have forgotten the question, I think. But
how do we inculcate compassion and this kind of a people-centered healthcare in budding professional as well as the lead player person? Because this is something that we are addressing.
so listen, aren't we going to do it in IIT Palakkad? Yes. What we do is to get something started there.
Sure.
Well, I know you are all very busy people. Maybe you can find a few hours on Saturdays. There are some people doing that kind of work, very compassionate people in Palakkad also. Maybe you can join them.
Sure.
Maybe, but maybe not everybody would be interested. We don't have to be, but some people will gladly come forward. Some volunteers training. So it is just bringing out the compassion. There's a in the Tibetan book of Living and Dying, Sogyal Rinpoche has a beautiful passage where he says, "You see that suffering, you see the starving child." I can't remember the words exactly, and he says, when you see that compassion welling up in you, do not waste it. Allow it to come out. But that requires great courage. But that courage comes from being together. One person alone won't be able to do it, which is why we are getting together. And I hope we'll be able to demonstrate it actually happening in Palliative.
That's right. I think it's 5-5, and I'm sure you will have other engagements. So maybe as a last closing question, what is your message to the students as well as the youth, the audience? How do they contribute to healthcare? Like, because you have demonstrated in palliative care definitely that they are one of the major stakeholders, community, and that is. But how do we envisage a future which could be community focused, people centered? What can be done? Many of them may not be aware about the whole work and about palliative care in general.
You are in IIT. You are most of you are technologists or going to be technologists. As I said earlier, I am not only a doctor, I am also a human being. You are going to be not only a technologist, you are also a human being. You will have the people around you. Everybody faces illness and suffering in their life. Your loved ones will. This is not about somebody else. This is about ourselves. Being able to deal with it means being prepared. And this will not only add meaning to your life, have that glow of satisfaction in you, this also will come useful in every single person's life.
Thank you so much for your valuable time. It was a very humbling experience for me to be able to speak with you and engage with you closely. So with this, we are forced to.
Can I say particularly thank you to Prachi and Sarah?
Thank you. So I would like to thank the whole team at Avnat Bharat Abhiyan, Mr. Kumar, who is the project coordinator for setting up the IT infrastructure and the assistance given by the IT team at IIT Palakkad, and all the attendees who have joined this talk at 4 o'clock, taking your time off from your busy schedule, and also the Prachi and Sarah, who has been tirelessly doing this, on the background, and all the other talks were also assisted by the team. And I would also like to thank the team at Palliative India for setting up all this IT infrastructure, everything to smoothen this process. And yeah, so thanks for joining.